Hello, my name is Johannes Helgeson, and I'm a concept artist and illustrator active in the games industry. I've been working for about 7 years doing games. And today, I would like to talk a little bit about this painting that I did recently and explain my process, walk you through my layer structure, do a little bit of a step-by-step. I'm not going to be painting this from scratch, um, but I will show you a few things that went through my head. So without further ado, let's get into it. Obviously, the first step for me is usually a line drawing. So this is something I did in my A5 Moleskine sketchbook, and I drew with a brown color ace pencil. I didn't have my idea was to make a warrior type. I wanted to make someone ferocious with a cool wolf armor, and that's what I tried to draw. You try to express a bit of emotion and story into it, but pretty simple drawing like that. So after you've done that, and I took a photo of it with my phone, I took it into the computer, and the next step was to mask it out, make sure that I separate the character from the background with a lasso tool. Kind of did that here, so you can just see like I'm going. Let's say disable this, and what you'll just do is go over it like that. Very simple approach. And you try to be meticulous and get some nice edges and get the shape right. And in the end, I create a layer mask for it, so you just have that separately. Simple enough. So the next step is to make selections. This is super boring, but it's very, very helpful all throughout the process. So what this allows me to do is later on in the process I can just select different parts, and I can just work inside those areas without having to worry about ruining edges or making color bleeds and stuff. So the way to do that is essentially I'll I'll kind of lock this into the layer underneath, and I will just start going over all the different areas that I know I'm going to be using, like the shape of the helmet, and I'll just go through all of the different parts in this way, and then you just fill it with whatever color. I think it's important not to use the color that you're going to be that you want in the end, because that can kind of confuse you. So I like to take something really garish and something which is not going to be exactly what it's going to be in the end. So in the end, you go through all the painting or all the drawing with this, and you'll end up with something like this. And as I said, it's a boring process, and yeah, it's not fun, but it's really going to help later on. Actually, what I'll do is, this can get pretty specific, like I got all these different kind of selections in the face. What I'll do is I'll create a new layer so I can just quickly have some important areas like the face, like the armor. I got those on different layers too, so I can just quickly kind of select those. The next thing is to start working on the local colors only. So I'll show you the finished, what it looks like here. These are the local colors. This is like the true color of everything in the picture, without shadows, without light, without any influence of the environment, no ambient stuff going on, no bounce light, nothing. It's just the local colors and a bit of hue variation, like temperature variation going on. And the way I do this is I'll use my selections from before, and the first step is usually to just fill everything with like the average color. I knew I kind of wanted this black, so you'll have this, and I mean, this isn't much, but what I'll do is I'll start using my brushes that have a bit of texture to them, and you'll start going in and just activating the surface with a bit of noise, just going over this, all of it, kind of not thinking about all the local colors right now except for the big main one. And after a while, you fill this out, and you got a bit of color variation and grain and structure and whatnot. I'll start getting more specific. So I would work on the face, for example, I'll use my selection for the face, and I'll just, figure out sort of average color for that, and I'll fill it up. I'll do the same thing here. Again, because I'm working in the selection, I don't have to worry about, ruining the edges, and I can go in with big, bold strokes and just create that sort of texture noise that I think is nice. Let's say this is too dark. I'll just press Command B. I'll adjust the colors to whatever I want. I can use levels, whatever you want. Just get a color close to what you want. And what I'll do then is I'll start getting more and more specific. So I'm like continuously going from big to small. So let's say we'll work on the mouth, and I can just go into my selection layer. I'll select the mouth, including everything inside, because again, I'm going to get more specific later. But what kind of color do I want here? Let's say I want this kind of dark blood red. I would just work on it like that, and boom, you kind of got an average color for the mouth. And then again, I'll go back to my my selection layer. Actually, like that, and I knew the color of the teeth was going to be kind of white. So you can just boom, go in with a few big strokes. And that's kind of the way I work it out, like going from big to small, and eventually I kind of end up with this. I think it's important to add color variety so that it's not all just one color, but you actually add like the color variations going on here. I'm being more red around the nose because I know the blood is a bit closer to the skin and so on. And same here, like there's a bit of strokes going on. I kind of like that. And then I wasn't sure about blood here, but I added that as a separate layer, just using custom brushes that I've accumulated over the years for painting this. I don't remember exactly which brush I used, but you just go in and just paint some blood. That's it. So let's say we're happy with this, like the local colors are there, and we activated the surfaces with a bit of texture and noise. The next step is to start working on the occlusion, and the occlusion makes it look like this. Occlusion is like sort of contact shadow. It's where light in general can't reach, so you get dark crevices and places where different elements are in contact with each other, where they connect. And I will do this usually with a big soft brush, and again, you can use the selections. They really come in handy here. So I'm just going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to show you a little bit how I do it. Oops. So layer. Oh, okay. And what this is actually, this is an adjustment layer. So you can create that by going to layer, new adjustment layer. And I think this is a hue saturation adjustment layer, which is usually what I use. And what this allows me to do is just paint in black and white. That's very convenient. So I kind of set this to, I made the lightness -77, saturation is less. And let's invert this. So okay, there's nothing going on right now. And what I'll do is I'll start using my selections again. So I'll go back and let's say I want to, make sure that down here there's not a lot of light going on. I'll take a big soft brush. I'll go to my occlusion layer, and I'll just start painting, like big strokes. And I'm thinking about where won't light reach in general, where do I need to separate different forms. And this can be kind of time consuming. I mean, this layer will take a lot of time. And I experimented with using different kinds of brushes, like texture brushes and so on, but I kind of enjoy having a soft one. And the thing is, if I don't have my selections, I kind of notice that it all kind of becomes this big, soft, mushy thing without, it's not distinct. Things start bleeding into each other. So actually making sure that I have my selection and then painting inside the selection, you kind of get a nice hard edge versus soft edge. And you can really start separating different elements. So eventually, having been very meticulous and doing that all over, you end up with something like this. And something I like to do in my occlusion layer is actually add a bit of line art. So for example, let's say for the nose here, the occlusion is going to be very, very subtle in parts of the face, but I still want to separate some form. So I'll make a selection, let's say like that. I don't know exactly how. Well, and now I can just paint inside that selection with a bit of there's a bit of line going on. So I'm kind of adding that to my ambient occlusion layer in some places where I feel ambient occlusion isn't enough. So that's what it looks like at this point with local colors, blood going on, you got the occlusion, and let's see what's next. I don't know if that's okay. Oh yeah. So I know this was going to be a night scene, so I start thinking about the sort of ambient color setup, and I added this adjustment layer, which I just called night, because in night situations sometimes stuff appears darker and more blue. So I kind of set this layer to a hue saturation adjustment layer, colorize, made it darker and a bit more blue. So everything is just going to be shaded with this kind of blue night setup. Next up, I did a backlight. I kind of knew I wanted one of those dramatic things that you sometimes see in movies, like horror movies and stuff. So the way to do this, I'll just duplicate this layer again. So we got this, and the way I paint in different light sources is actually using the lasso tool a lot, and I'm thinking about which planes are going to be receiving this light, which planes will be hit by the light source. And I'm just thinking 1 and 0, like either it's hit by it or it's not. I'm not worrying about soft transitions at the moment. It's only about, is it being hit or not, in a sort of cell-shaded kind of way. And I'll just go through all the painting, making this selection at first. So I can be a bit rough, but I still try to be somewhat meticulous. I want to make sure that I'm not sloppy. So let's say I've gone through all of it like this. What I'll do then is I'll switch over to the quick mask mode using this little button here, and you'll get this thing. And now I can start concerning myself with where are the edges going to be hard, where are they going to be soft. And I'll actually go in with a custom brush, and I can start painting in the mask, and I can get these sort of painterly edges where I want them. So I will go through the entire painting like this. Just sculpting edges, making sure that I have a good combo of soft versus hard edges. And now I'm being kind of sloppy. I'm doing this really fast for you guys. Usually I would be more meticulous and slow. And let's say I'm happy with this, I'll just go to the button here again, and I'll go out of the quick mask mode, and boom, I got a selection with these nice edges. And what I can do then is I can just, because this is an adjustment layer, I'm just going to paint inside that with whatever brush I have, and you can kind of get a nice painterly effect. I'll just hide the selection so you can see. So that's usually the way I block in every light source. I'm just going to go over it once with a lasso tool, like hard edges, and then go into quick mask mode, sculpt it, go back into my selection, and then paint inside now having those edges predefined. And what it allows me to do is really go in with big, bold strokes, and I don't have to worry about, painting outside the selection or whatever. That's kind of useful. So I'll just delete this layer, and you can see here this was kind of like with different brushes. I achieved some soft edges versus hard edges. So that's that light source. The next light source was the ground plane. So I was kind of thinking about adding a sort of red glow coming from the ground plane. I don't know where this is coming from exactly. It's like magic. But I know that adding this kind of red light adds a bit of horror to it. I think I remember it from seeing Bram Stoker's Dracula. They were using this quite a bit. And I just wanted to use that too. So this is an adjustment layer, and it's set to screen. That's like the blend mode I usually use for every light source. It's like an additive light source, and as far as I know, that's kind of how light works in real life. And again, the same process for this. I was just making, selections, or I could be using my selection mask from before, and I would just think about, which planes are receiving this light from the ground plane, and then switch into quick mask mode, do some sculpting, make sure there's, hard edge versus soft edge, go back, have a selection, and then paint inside that selection. It's pretty useful. And because I knew this is like a shiny material, I added a specular map. So I'm kind of thinking about, shiny things, how the metal is shiny. Yeah, exactly, the specular inside there. Again, this is a screen mode, just increasing the lightness, saturation, and going over those points where I feel there's going to be shiny speculars. And again, I think I just, you make selections, again, switching back and forth between selections, quick mask mode, sculpting, and that's about it. Then came the ambient light of the scene, because I knew that she was surrounded by this big blue dome we call the sky. I knew that was going to be a little bit blue, and it was going to influence a lot of those upward-facing planes. And that usually adds a bit of, ties her in with the environment quite a bit. So again, it's a screen layer, a screen adjustment layer. I'm just painting in black and white in the mask to get that result. Thinking about, planes and their angle to the light source. Next up, I added a bit of atmospheric perspective. Now this is very exaggerated, but atmospheric perspective is essentially in a scene. You have a lot of particles going around in the air, and the further something is away from you, the further away it is, usually the more it gets influenced by the particles in the atmosphere, which kind of tints it towards the ambient color of the scene. And in this case, it's a bit of a blue, and it's nice to kind of start separating elements, because things kind of blend together sometimes, and what you want to do is you want to make sure what's in front of what, and to be clear with that. And atmospheric perspective can really help. Then I added a bit of, I call this punch. It's just a layer, an overlay layer, and I'm just punching up the colors a bit with some big soft brushes. It's very, very subjective, and it's just what I feel looks good. Then I knew there was going to be glow in the scene, so glow is kind of, it's a nice special effect that adds a lot of life and flash. And again, that's a screen layer, and I'm just painting with a big soft brush to get a bit of that glow going on. So that's the first step. I'll show you the next step. So we arrived at that point. We have the character exactly. So the character is like fully built up with only adjustment layers to this point. And what I'll do then is I'll actually start painting, because this is like all hard edge stuff going on. And what you want to do is add a bit of, at least I want to do that. I want to add a bit of painterly look. So I go in with my a bristle brush, and I actually just start painting on top. Things like the eyelashes, sculpting a bit. I don't want to do this all over because it's kind of time consuming, so I'm trying to choose my focal points, like which are the important parts of the painting, and that's where I'll start uh, sculpting a bit. And it's kind of fun. I like making some edges softer and looking more painterly and stuff. The next step to that is actually using the smudge tool. So when I first started out, the smudge was a big no-no, but it's super, super helpful. And what I'll do is, so I'll go to the smudge, and I'm using a custom brush here for the smudge tool. And what you'll do is you can just start going over this, and you start sculpting edges, and you push and pull paint around, especially for like the materials like the fur here. It's super useful. And you know, you just have some fun, play around, and you get a sort of traditional oily feel with it, you know? You don't want to go too crazy and do it all over. Like if I was doing it all over the edges of these armor pieces, they would lose their material properties. And they would be too soft. But you know, in moderation, you can use it for hair and stuff. And what I want to do is I just want to eliminate some of that hard-edged look that I got previously from all the lasso tool, you know, using the lasso tool. So after that, you know, I'll reach a point like this, and okay, that's a color balance. I'm just, you know, I felt it needed a bit of adjustment. So an adjustment layer, I'm just fixing that. Adding a bit of, you know, yeah, the glow, that's its own layer. And then I just paint the background, and this is a very simple background. It's kind of abstract. It's just, you know, a blue thing with fog and some trees. And I blurred it, so because I wanted this not to be a focal point, so I kind of made it just recede in space by blurring it a bit. So together with character, you kind of get this. Here are a bit of special effects, adding a bit of light, a bit of dust or smoke going on, adding a bit of particles flying around in the air because that's hot. And in the end, I just flatten all of this stuff, so I kind of reach this. And what I'll do then is I start thinking about the focal points more. You know, I want to use hue intensity and contrast to lead the eye to where I really want you to look, which is like the face. So one thing to do is I will go into mode. I'll convert to grayscale. Yeah, flatten. Perfect. And we have a black and white version of the picture, which I'll just select all. I'll copy, Control Z, so I go back to where I was, and then I'll just paste this black and white on top. So what I'll do now is I will drop the opacity a little bit of that. I will add a mask, and then with some big gradations, like the gradient tool, I can go in and I kind of mask out where I don't want it to be as desaturated, so I can create these a more concentrated focal point. So this I did pretty subtly. It was pretty subtle all over, but it does help to create a bit of focus. And on that same note, I will just take the whole picture, I'll copy it, paste, and I will go into filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and now we got sort of, you know, everything is out of focus. And the same technique again, I'll create a mask, I'll go in with big gradations, and I can kind of choose where I want the image to be sharp. And this again creates a bit of a, you know, a better focus, so not everything has the same edge hardness. And in the end, you know, I kind of subtle, but you see these things are more soft. The edge of the sword, everything. So, but again, her face is super crisp. Like that's where I really want the focus to be. Then I added just a simple framing element, like a foreground element. This adds a bit of depth. So it was just like a shape of some leaves. I think I used a custom brush for this, just black. And I blurred it a bit too to get that depth going on. And I think finally I added a bit of color balance. and we add a frame to it and my signature. And that's about it. That's like my process in a nutshell, usually how I go about it. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for looking. I hope I could, that maybe you learned something from it, or at least that you got a bit of insight into my painting process. Thank you so much, and take care. Bye.